Hey, this is Rue, and today I'm doing another EU4 challenge run, this time starting as Karabakh. I've done a couple challenges focused on diplomacy, a no army Trebizond run, and a no casualties Byzantium into Roman Empire, but this one's going to be the opposite. The rules are very simple. We can only use our diplomats to declare and end wars. Everything else, improving relations, building spy networks, royal marriages, alliances, offering and annexing vassals, and so on, is forbidden. As such, our diplomats will be idle for almost the entire game. To make this interesting, we're going to play another one of my favorite nations, Karabakh. I like playing in this region. There's action and opportunity throughout the early game, and you're in a race against time until the Ottomans or another major come knocking. Karabakh is the only Coptic tag in the Middle East, but for a no diplomacy run, our religion doesn't matter as much. What does matter, and make this start even more interesting, is the fact that we start as a vassal of Qoyunlu. In a normal game, being a vassal of a relatively strong power can often work to your advantage since you can get allies that would normally be way out of your league. For example, if you're playing as Syria or even Athens, you can often get an Ottoman alliance. In the case of Karabakh, depending on how the rivals play out, you can typically get Ajam and or the Mamluks as allies, which makes the Independence War and early game significantly easier. Our early game's a bit RNG dependent because AIQQ has a really high variance start. They have the potential to have a very strong game. They're one of the strongest nations in the area with lots of weaker neighbors, but they also have drawbacks, being a minority religion, Shia, religious unity, and rebel issues, and so on. In my first two attempts, QQ had great starts, gobbling up neighbors and then annexing us. I tried to fight each time, but if QQ has a strong early game, this independence war is basically impossible without allies. This is my third attempt, and QQ is going to implode spectacularly. It all starts with a large stack of pretender rebels that spawns in Baghdad. 21k is a sizable army for this early in the game, but this is manageable. All QQ needs to do is hire the Free Company or another small merc stack to get a numbers advantage. Instead, the AI puts on a masterclass on how not to handle rebels. It seems to know it can't win a straight-up fight, otherwise it would attack, but it leaves its entire army in Baghdad, which the rebels come back to. Despite taking a river crossing penalty, the rebels still win and send the QQ army packing. In March of 1446, QQ brings their battered armies back to southern Iraq and they get attacked by the rebels, losing again. At this point, QQ only has 7,000 troops and 1,000 manpower in reserve, which is basically a green light to us and anybody else who wants to declare war. During this Independence War, and really throughout most of the early and mid-game, we're going to go significantly over the force limit and into debt. This is one of the key advantages a player has over the AI. The AI plays much more conservatively with force limit and debt. This is also one of the big differences between single-player and multiplayer EU4. We grab the Free Company and train enough troops to get up to 10k. The QQ capital has a level 3 fort, so we'll need at least 9k to be able to siege it. While we're recruiting troops, QQ gets attacked again for its third straight loss. The AI would have been better off leaving the rebels alone and letting them enforce demands than whatever this is. In any event, this is great for us, and we take advantage, declaring independence at the end of August of 1446. We're still outnumbered. QQ has another vassal and one ally, but they'd have to combine all their forces to beat us, and I don't see that happening. We're fortunate with the timing here. A retreating QQ stack lands in our capital at the end of September, and we get an easy stack wipe. We move west, occupying two provinces and starting to siege the fort in Yerevan. The placement of this fort is really unfortunate. It blocks us from occupying any other provinces until we take it, which is going to take a while. Remember, we can't ask neighbors for military access due to the rules of this run. QQ's rival Ajam joins the party in February of 1447, declaring a conquest war. This is unfortunate since they're going to take land we want but totally expected. We're really mana starved. Our admin's been going to increasing stability, better to do this now before we have a huge religious unity penalty, and I'm putting some diplo into developing our capital to try to improve our economy and force limit. We're currently prioritizing mill since getting behind on mill tech can be a game ender at this phase. The white sheep joined the dogpile, with Qoyunlu declaring on QQ in July of 1447. In March, Mushasha joins as well, putting QQ on the receiving end of 4 simultaneous wars. Our war gets slightly simpler when Ajam annexes Gilan in a separate peace deal. We finally take Yerevan in June, but at this point it's almost too late. Bayezid was one of our priority targets in this war since it's a requirement for one of our missions, and Tabriz, our other priority target, is already under siege by Ajam. We'll try to take what we can, and I move our troops south into Khoi. I've been holding off on completing our first mission until we get to positive stability, which we finally reach in July. This first mission, breaking the chains, and really the mission tree generally are pretty good for Karabakh. This one gives a free stability, 100 of each power type, a bunch of permaclaims, and 10% AE reduction for 20 years. The permaclaims are going to be really useful since we can't fabricate claims. Ajam takes Tabriz in October of 1448, which lets us push south into Urmia. Somewhat surprisingly, QQ unconditionally surrenders to us in January. I thought about trying to stall here and wait for Ajam or AQ to make peace first, but I don't want to deal with the war exhaustion and I don't think it would really matter. The two provinces I really want, Bayezid and Tabriz, are probably gone regardless. We make peace with QQ in February of 1449, getting our independence, gold, war reparation, and 6 provinces. This war was way easier than I thought it'd be, but this run is far from out of the woods. Our economy is in shambles. We had to take out a ton of loans, and inflation's going to be an ongoing problem. Capturing Yerevan lets us pick a second Coptic blessing. We now have extra missionary strength as well as the 10% CCR from our first blessing. Now that we're independent, we set our first 2 rivals, Ardabili and Shirvan. We also get a cool flavor event for liberating Yerevan that gives us some prestige. Speaking of Ardabili, they have no allies, so this is basically free real estate and we declare in March. This is an attack into a mountain fort, which is normally ill-advised, but enemy troops aren't at full morale and we have a 4K advantage, so we win fairly easily. Ardabili forces try to retreat to our territory, but we pursue and stack wipe them in Khoi. Around the same time we begin our siege, Ajam makes peace with QQ. As I expected, Tabriz is gone. Not only is this going to be much harder to take, but Tabriz is also one of the provinces needed to form Persia. Surely we won't have to deal with a strong Persia this game. Just like our first war, the Ardabili War turns into a dogpile, with Biapas declaring in August of 1449. At the same time, Mushasha makes peace with QQ, taking most of southern Iraq. A month later, Ajam warns us against going to war, the first of several times this is going to happen. In November, AQ makes peace with QQ, taking all their western provinces. We're 5 years into the game, and QQ has been reduced to a 1-province minor. Even by AI standards, this is a pretty spectacular implosion. Shirvan goes after Ardabili in December, and if that wasn't enough, Ajam joins the fun in March. Unfortunately for all of them, in the world of EU4, the early bird gets the worm, and we finish the siege in April of 1450. We do a full annexation with gold. I'm happy with our initial expansion, but the diplomatic situation around us is pretty grim. 2 of our neighbors, Ajam and Shirvan, are allied to the Ottomans, so those are non-starters. AQ is allied to Shirvan, Ajam, and the Timurids. Biapas, only allied to Shirvan, would have potential, but we've been warned by Ajam so they'd get involved. Georgia has weak allies, but we don't have a claim on them and we can't use a diplomat to fabricate one. In May of 1452, we get a rumor that Ajam's going to declare on Biapas. This is the perfect way around the Ajami warning, so we get our military prepped at the border. We're still hemorrhaging money. With the army funded, we're losing around 6 gold per month, but we have to maintain a decent military or we're going to get dogpiled. Ajam declares in August and we immediately follow suit. This is another attack in the mountains, but we have the advantage in numbers, morale, and miltech. After taking Astara, I send most of our troops north into Shirvan. Ajam stack wipes the Shirvani army in Shamaki, and I send a small force to start occupying provinces. Ajam makes peace in August of 1453, taking the province of Fuman. We capture Shirvan and move north to finish off what's left of their military. We occupy all their provinces and make peace in March of 1454, demanding full annexation and a bit of gold. As a secondary belligerent, this deal is going to cost a decent amount of AE, but at this point we need to take whatever we can. We make peace with Biapas shortly afterwards, taking their sole remaining province. Taking the Shirvani provinces lets us complete our second mission in November, Caspian Riches. This gives us extra trade efficiency for 30 years, but more importantly it gives us another center of trade in the Persia node, which is extremely good. In June of 1462 we get a lucky event, border tensions. In a normal game, this is a pretty minor event that gives you a claim to a neighboring province. This one was lucky enough to be a Georgian province, so we finally have a way in. We declare war in July, setting Trebizond as a co-belligerent. I'm not sure that we actually want to take Trebizond, but they have no additional allies, so it doesn't hurt to include them. We start the war by laying siege to the Georgian capital of Tbilisi. I probably would have been better off waiting for them to make the first move, since we get attacked by a combined force of Georgia, Theodoro, and Trebizond. This is yet another -2 mountain battle, but we're up in miltech and morale and squeak out a narrow win. Shortly afterwards, the Ottomans declare on Trebizond. Georgia dishonors, but this should tie up Trebizond and Theodoro for the rest of the war. We occupy Tbilisi in June of 1463, but Georgia has 2 more adjacent forts to the west, which we move to siege. We white peace Trebizond in January, but I suspect they're not going to be around much longer. Georgia makes one last attempt to defend its mountain forts in September of 1464, but they're just too outmatched. We finish sieging Kartli in February and chase what's left of the Georgian army towards the Black Sea, eventually stack-wiping them in Tau. With their army gone, we set up the peace deal, full annexation. We get permaclaims to all this Georgian territory in our mission tree, but unfortunately it's still locked behind taking Bayezid, so we'll have to core these at full cost. We certainly don't need 3 adjacent forts, so I dismantle 2 of them. The fort in Kars is well placed and should be useful to us going forward. The Ottomans make peace with Trebizond in June of 1465, demanding their full annexation. This gives us a land border with the Ottomans, which isn't exactly a great feeling. Ajam goes after QQ's last province in October, but we didn't have a claim, so there wasn't anything we could have done. Now we're getting warned by the Ottomans. This area is starting to feel pretty cozy. We're still way behind in admin tech. All our admin's gone to increasing stability and coring. The good news is that we have a respectable 5.5% missionary strength. This is from a combination of estate privileges, enforced unity of the faith, religious culture, and the Second Coptic blessing. Combined with the state edict, we're able to convert provinces to Coptic at a decent rate. In May of 1469, we get one of the worst heirs I've ever seen, so we immediately cut him loose at the cost of 50 prestige. We've been lowering autonomy whenever possible, which has been helping our economy but spawning lots of rebels. By August of 1470, we're at almost break even, but this is with army maintenance turned down and a number of loans still outstanding. We also have to cycle out these merc companies regularly due to low manpower reserves. For example, here in December, we dismiss the Tabaristan company, take out a loan, and then hire the Grand Company. The biggest key to punching above your weight in the early game and even beyond is the combination of loans and mercs. The next several years are mostly peaceful, although we do put down a number of separatist rebellions. Our missionary is still busy converting, and I decide to delete the fort in Shirvan and build a new one in Ardabili, which has both a better location and better terrain. In May of 1477, the Ottomans declare on AQ, putting them at war with the Timurids, Gaz, Ajam, and Hassa. The Timurids have lost multiple independence wars and are a husk of themselves at this point. The only real power in this list is Ajam. This is a golden opportunity, so we jump in, declaring at the end of the month. I send our mercs into AQ territory while our regular forces get their morale back. We defeat the AQ army and end up occupying the 3 northernmost provinces. It's hard to tell since the Ottoman and Karabakh occupation colors are really similar. Next, we head north to knock Gaz out of the war. While we're sieging Gaz's capital, we meet the requirements to complete our 3rd mission of the game, Ecclesiastical Revival. This one gives us 5 tax dev and 20% extra manpower in True Faith provinces, which is a decent boost. We take Lakia in March of 1479, and I set up the Gaz peace deal. We're going to take 1 province. Lakia has a mountain fort that I want, gold, war reps, and force them to end their alliance with Ajam. Now it's time to attack Ajam. The Ottomans and their allies are sieging Tabriz, so we head for the mountain fort on the Caspian coast. I thought the Ajami army would be tied up dealing with the Ottomans, but I was wrong and we get attacked. This is our first battle without a morale or mil-tech advantage, and once again we have the -2 mountain penalty. But this time it's too much to overcome and I have our forces retreat. We do have to push here, since we want some occupations before the Ottomans peace out, otherwise we're going to be dealing with a fairly tough war. So we head back into Amul, but this time with Ottoman support in the area. Ajam's been having a very good game. In March of 1480 they make peace in a different war, taking 8 provinces from Afghanistan. This includes Yazd, one of the key provinces required to form Persia. The Ottomans make peace with Ajam in August, demanding war reparations but nothing else. We're now outnumbered in this war. We have about 23,000 total troops and the enemy has a combined strength of about 34,000. We get lucky and win the siege at 7%, and for the first time this game our economy is actually about break even. Of course, that means it's time for more loans and more mercs, and we hire the Free Company again. I move to siege Tabriz, while the Ajami army goes back to take Amal. The Timurids are willing to take white peace, which we offer in April of 1481. Here I have to make a tough decision. We're currently losing the siege race, and the AI has placed its forces such that we would be forced to take another -2 mountain battle if we went to try to relieve Amal. My primary goal with Ajam is to take Tabriz and prevent the formation of Persia. Persia gets a borderline overpowered mission tree with a bunch of free dev and permaclaims and a strong set of military-themed national ideas. Unfortunately, I do a bit of checking and it's too late. Tabriz is one of the optional requirements for Persia, and Ajam already has everything else. Reviewing this in hindsight, there was a way for me to stop Persia here, but I would have had to take Qazvin, which would have required taking a minimum of 3 provinces and a long drawn-out war. That might have been the right call, but the bigger threat's the Ottomans, who I have a feeling are going to come knocking soon. In addition, we're currently in debt about 925 gold, which is significant. Despite having a decent amount of land, a lot of it is pretty low dev and in mediocre trade nodes like Crimea and Astrakhan. In other words, our economy isn't very good. Ajam is willing to pay 250 gold for peace, which would let us repay several of our loans. I'm still not sure if this was the correct move, but it's what I went with. The Ottomans make peace with AQ in September of 1481, taking 5 provinces. We take what's left, the 3 northern provinces that we occupied at the beginning of the war. This lets us finally complete the liberation of the homeland mission, which gives our ruler additional military skill, morale of armies, permaclaims, and even a couple cores on Armenian culture provinces in Ottoman territory. By annexing Georgia, we've already completed the requirements for the next mission, which gives us Georgian as an accepted culture, lowers autonomy, and increases manpower in Georgian provinces, and gives us additional permaclaims. Attentive viewers may have already noticed, but in October I see a notification pop up with a familiar flag. As we expected, Ajam has formed Persia. We're now sandwiched between the Ottomans and Persia. Circassia is guaranteed by Muscovy, so our only easy expansion left is also the worst territory, Gaz and further into the Central Asian steppe. The Ottomans and Persia do share a land border, so in theory they could fight and weaken each other and we could take advantage. I don't think the game has Persia and the Ottomans hard-coded as historical rivals, but whenever I play Persia, the Ottoman AI acts like we are, so surely AI Persia will get the same treatment. By January of 1483, we finished coring our new provinces, which unlocks the decision to form the Kingdom of Armenia. This isn't going to change much. Karabakh shares both its national ideas and mission tree with Armenia, but we'll get kingdom rank and a nice new map color, so there's no reason not to. Besides, having 4 adjacent green nations just feels off. Let's talk for a second about national ideas. Karabakh and Armenia get decent ideas, but they're kind of all over the place. Some of them, dev cost, war exhaustion reduction, and production efficiency, are quite good, but others, like Diplo Rep and Recover Army Morale Speed, are mediocre. Notably absent are any direct military buffs, such as army morale, discipline, or infantry or cav combat ability. Our neighboring rivals, Persia, the Ottomans, Mamluks, etc., all have 1 or more of these. We unlock our first idea group in August of 1486, and I go with defensive. I like defensive ideas. The morale boost in particular is going to be useful, but in hindsight I think this should have been quantity or mercenary ideas. Right after taking defensive ideas, the Ottomans declare their first war against us. They don't call any allies, but they do have Crimea as a subject. The initial numbers are 29k on our side versus 51k on the Ottoman side, including a massive advantage in cavalry. Only one thing to do, let's train more soldiers and hire more mercs. A funny thing about fighting a major power is that a lot of nations will offer you loans. We'll definitely accept these, but we're not going to pay any back. The Ottoman war goal is Erzurum, which unfortunately isn't within the zone of control of our fort in Kars. The Ottomans start the war by marching east and sieging Ardabili. We have a respectable 86% fort defense, but I'm not sure we can win a siege race. We're also getting random gifts like this 115 gold from Lithuania in November. As expected, the Ottoman siege progresses much faster than ours, so I bring our forces east and engage the combined Ottoman-Crimean stack in January of 1488. The army quality is pretty close, although enemy forces do have a 5% discipline advantage. But now we have the mountain bonus on our side, and we push back the attackers fairly easily. The Ottomans regroup and lay siege to Kars, but again they split their forces. We engage the enemy stack in Kars in July, winning a second victory. While the bulk of the enemy forces retreat, I push into Mush, engaging a smaller Ottoman stack, but this time the terrain penalty is against us. We win, but this time with a much more unfavorable loss ratio. Our forces start sieging the Ottoman fort in Diyarbakir, but this is a bad idea and we get attacked by Ottoman forces in March of 1489. We end up retreating, but with an even worse loss ratio than before. We're clearly not ready to push into Ottoman territory yet. The next Ottoman advance comes in the west, and this is the worst yet since both Ottoman stacks are supporting each other. We need more mercs, so we add the Kurdish company to our growing list of mercenaries. We're now losing 16 gold per month, but we really don't have a choice. Both sides have increased their army size from the start of the war. The Ottomans have gone from 51k to almost 60k, and we've gone from 29k to 43k. We engage in January of 1490 and win a narrow victory. One thing I need to pay better attention to is timing it such that both our stacks arrive on the same day. In May our king dies, which wouldn't be that big of a deal except we had a 10% army morale bonus from a mission that only lasted as long as he was alive. During our military expansion, I trained several cannon regiments which help us successfully take the Ottoman fort in Diyarbakir in October. The Ottomans try to take it back, so I gather our forces in Mush and attach armies so that everybody arrives on the same day. We engage in April of 1491 and it's another close battle. Although this is highlands instead of mountains, we're getting a bonus +1 to rolls here from the age ability, since our capital is also a highlands province. While enemy forces retreat, we're able to siege down northern Iraq and part of eastern Anatolia. The Ottomans come back for a second round at Diyarbakir, and we fight another battle in February of 1492. We follow up this victory by going after a separate Ottoman stack in the drylands of Mardin. We get a cheeky little stack wipe of retreating Ottoman forces in Mush. Note that while Ottoman forces are roughly comparable to ours, Crimean troops are significantly worse with just 3.2 morale. See this battle in Mush where we wipe out Crimea's 10k stack. We advance towards the next Ottoman fort in Ankara. The Ottomans send 18,000 troops to relieve the siege, but I bring our mercenary stack in as reinforcements and we win another victory. We finish the siege of Ankara in October of 1493 and head east to take back the war goal and defend Diyarbakir. This must be at least the third battle of Diyarbakir, and we're successful again. Overall, the war's been going well, but we're still losing a lot of gold per month, so I look to make peace at the end of March of 1494. We take 6 provinces across eastern Anatolia, war reparations, and 200 gold. Taking the rest of the Armenian cores lets us complete another mission. This is kind of an interesting one. It renames our country to Great Armenia, it upgrades our national ideas, which is cool and kind of unique, it gives us permanent power projection and a huge set of permaclaims across Anatolia and the Levant. We also get an event with a bunch of interesting flavor text. It's impressive to have this much unique text and flavor for a country that most people are never going to play. In hindsight, I think ending the war here was a mistake and I should have pushed harder for a knockout blow. We had the Ottomans on the ropes and our economy could withstand at least a few more years of wartime spending. The ideal scenario would be to weaken the Ottomans to the point that the Mamluks or a European power jumped in with their own war and effectively knocked the Ottomans out of the game. It's great to pick up 6 provinces and some gold, but the Ottomans are still a major power and I'm sure they'll be back for revenge. In September of 1497, we choose our second idea group and we go with religious ideas. You can make a pretty good case for trade, econ, inno, or even admin ideas here, but religious feels like it fits the theme of this run and it'll be nice to have a guaranteed CB since we still can't fabricate claims. Speaking of religion, let's talk for a second about Coptic and EU4. I like playing minority religions, including Coptic, but it's really not the best fit for a no diplomacy run. Due to the spread of holy sites, we basically have to hope Ethiopia has a good game. We'll check back later to see how that works out. We spend the next few years focused on economic development, paying off loans, building churches, workshops, marketplaces, and so on. I increase our regular forces to 32k but dismiss the merc companies. This may not have been the best idea since the Ottomans declare on us again in October of 1507. They call Gaz as their only ally and they have a combined strength of around 54k at the start of the war. Time to bring back the Grand Company, which will give us another 15k. I'd like to blitz Gaz and knock them out of the war as soon as possible, but the Ottomans start sieging the war goal of Diyarbakir and we just don't have time. We successfully defend in April of 1508, but it's a bit concerning. Even with double the troops, this isn't a convincing win. We're now behind the Ottomans in both morale and discipline, and as usual they have way more cav than we do. With the Ottomans pushed back, I send our siege army north to Gaz. Splitting our forces when outnumbered is somewhat risky, but I'd like to simplify this war into a 1v1. Our southern force pushes back another Ottoman siege of Diyarbakir in January of 1509. Just weeks later, we finish the siege of Kundia and move to bring our forces back together. The Ottomans come back to Diyarbakir with their biggest force yet, 40,000 troops. We're only barely able to push them back at significant cost. We push into Ottoman territory but are forced to come back to deal with another sieging army in April of 1510. The same thing happens in October, another sieging army, another win. We separate piece Gaz in November, taking both their remaining provinces. The Ottomans take both a river crossing and highlands terrain penalty to attack our forces in Marash, but even though we win, we can't afford to take losses at the same rate as the Ottomans. We're now basically out of manpower and will have to start transitioning to more mercs. By June of 1511, the Ottomans are willing to accept white peace, and so are we. We have no advantage in military quality right now, and with our manpower at 0, I don't see us making any deep pushes into Ottoman territory. We're barely winning battles with +1 and +2 dice rolls. By August of 1513, we have enough dev in Armenian culture provinces to complete the mission National Awakening. This one gives us some reform progress and cheaper culture conversion cost, but more importantly it gives us a center of trade in our capital, which is also in the Persia trade node. With our current borders, we would normally have just one center of trade in the Persia node, in Yerevan, but with this mission tree we now have 3, which is pretty nice. We finished defensive ideas in October of 1516, just in time for the Ottomans to declare their third war on us. The funny thing here is that the Ottomans aren't really attacking anybody else. To the west, there's a really big Hungary, and somehow the Ottomans and Mamluks still haven't fought. The Ottomans don't call any allies, so this is a straight 1v1. Their army has about 64,000 troops while ours has 35k. 35 isn't going to cut it, so it's time to merc up yet again. The Ottomans, like they seem to do in every one of my games, have completed quality ideas and are now on quantity. This means they have a 10% discipline advantage, as well as advantages in both cav and infantry combat ability. Unlike previous wars, the Ottomans no longer have their forces split into different stacks wandering around. They open the war by putting their entire 64k stack on Diyarbakir. They're going to take serious attrition casualties, but this is the biggest challenge we've faced so far. I carefully position our forces around the province and give the order to go. This is a close battle, but we squeak out a narrow victory. While the Ottoman forces recover, we occupy northern Iraq and part of central Anatolia. We're fortunate here that the Ottomans haven't built any border forts. A fort in Sivas, for example, would make pushing much more difficult. The Ottomans take an ill-advised battle in Sivas in June of 1518, taking both a river crossing and highland terrain penalty. We win, but these battles are concerning. Battles that should be a slam dunk, like this one with both superior terrain and numbers, are much closer than they should be, and we're frequently on the losing side of the casualty numbers. The main Ottoman stack, 44k, marches into Sivas, again taking the river crossing penalty. Our reinforcements arrive just in time to push the Ottomans back a second time. Ottoman forces regroup and make another attempt at Diyarbakir. Our fort defense is high enough that I go for a siege race. Normally, I'm not a big fan of siege races since I don't like leaving things to RNG, but in a situation like this, against an enemy with an advantage in both numbers and army quality, we'll roll the dice. One of the Ottoman stacks heads west, and we lift the siege to assist our troops, notching another victory. We're not winning a siege race at this point, so we head east with our combined forces and engage again at Diyarbakir in August of 1519. We have a 2-to-1 advantage, and this is our first convincing win of the war. We push west and start another siege race, with our stack on Ankara and the Ottoman forces back at Diyarbakir. Our fort defense is over 90%, so the odds should be in our favor. We capture Ankara and rush back to relieve the siege, but the entire Ottoman army is together here and I don't want to take my chances. We make peace in June of 1521, taking 4 provinces and some gold. Fighting the Ottomans when they have both a quality and quantity advantage is rough. We really need another military idea group to go toe-to-toe. In February of 1523, we see the classic Ottoman-French alliance, but that's going to be a non-factor in this run. First, the Ottomans are the ones who keep attacking us, and France isn't going to join an offensive war that far away. And if we want to declare on the Ottomans, we can use the Holy War CB and France won't fight against fellow Christians. In February of 1528, we declare war on Persia. Despite staying Sunni, they somehow don't have a single ally, so this is another 1v1. Persia's northern flank is guarded by 2 mountain forts that I'd rather not fight on, so we open the war by marching into central Iraq. Persia heads for our own mountain fort in Ardabili, but they split their armies to retake Iraq, which lets us take a favorable battle in December of 1528. Although they still have an edge in discipline, these Persian troops aren't as capable as the Ottomans we've been fighting, and we have both a significant numbers and terrain advantage. Our truce with the Ottomans ends in September of 1529 as we finish sieging the Persian mountain fort in Tabriz. This is going to be important, but not in the way you expect. We capture Tabriz later that same month and head west to engage the Persians in central Iraq. Unfortunately, as we win this battle, I get a disturbing notification. The Ottomans are demanding we make white peace with Persia. Realistically, we can't fight both the Ottomans and Persia at the same time, so I'm forced to accept. I know I'm sometimes hard on the AI in this game, but I have to tip my hat here. This was actually a pretty good Diplo play by the AI and entirely avoidable by me, since I waited too long after the Ottoman War to go after Persia. When our Ottoman truce ended, I thought there was a decent chance they'd declare on us again, but I wasn't expecting an enforced peace, since the Ottomans almost never have good relations with Persia. In June of 1535, we unlock our third idea group, quality. I really want to get to at least military parity with the Ottomans, and completing this group should go a long way towards doing that. In the summer of 1538, we embrace a naval doctrine and start building our first ships. Our naval force limit is just 21, which isn't going to be enough to challenge the Ottomans, but it's a start. In April of 1540, we complete the requirements for the mission Rebuild Tigranakert. This is a pretty cool mission. It renames the province of Diyarbakir, changes the trade good to cloth, gives permanent bonuses to dev cost and trade value, and unlocks a decision allowing us to move our capital here. Moving our capital is a little bit risky since this is very much on the front line with the Ottomans, but I think we can defend it, so I enact the decision. Of course, this moves our trade collection point out of Persia, so we set Yerevan as our main trade city. In February of 1542, the Ottomans declare war on us for the 4th time. These guys just won't learn their lesson. Initial troop counts at the start of the war, 80k for the Ottomans, 45k for us. We do have one thing going for us. This is another 1v1, which is definitely preferable to the Ottomans calling in a bunch of random allies. We've also strengthened our economy since the last series of wars, upgrading trade centers and building churches and workshops. We should be able to fight longer before ruining our economy with loans. We hired the Grand Company, giving us another 21,000 troops and significantly closing the army gap. As usual with these wars, the Ottomans start by sieging our new capital of Tigranakert. Moving the capital here gives us an additional fort level which could be useful. Our combined forces relieve the siege in June of 1542, but the Ottomans retreat quickly. They still have a discipline advantage, since we haven't finished quality ideas yet, but their golden era has ended, so we now have a significant edge in morale. The Ottomans take a river crossing penalty to fight in Urfa, but again retreat once they realize they're going to lose. We take a few border provinces, and countries again start offering us loans that we're never going to pay back. This isn't an ethical run, so this is mostly free gold. The third battle of the war is in the north, in the hills of Tokat. Despite taking a -1 terrain penalty and eventually retreating, the casualty ratio is still in the Ottomans' favor at over 2-1. Our forces march west and take a fourth battle in February of 1543. We fall back to reinforce briefly, but the Ottomans attack again in the province of Bozak. These battles are starting to follow a pattern. Ottoman forces retreat, giving us the victory, but with another negative casualty ratio. The good news here is that the majority of our forces are mercenaries, which will only deplete gold and not our national manpower. In this game, running out of manpower is significantly worse than having to take some loans. We fall back and I hire one more merc stack in October. The Ottomans regroup for another major siege of our capital, and we march to meet them in spring of 1544. I get a little bit lazy with army micro here. I would have been better off timing it so that our forces engaged on the same day and saving one stack for reinforcement. Fortunately, we still win, but at a heavy cost. We lost almost 25,000 infantry in this battle alone. Our forces push west, and the Ottomans take another river crossing penalty to fight once again in the drylands of Bozak. We win again, this time with approximately even casualties. We advance towards the fort in Ankara, but a second Ottoman army tries to catch one of our mercenary stacks in Kırşehir. Our other armies reinforce, and the Ottomans retreat again. We go to siege Ankara, and we're met by a large Ottoman relief army in January of 1545. We're now the ones with a -1 terrain penalty, but if we want to take land, we're going to have to take Ankara at some point. Both sides reinforce with every available soldier, to the point where the entire armies of both nations are committed to this battle. This is a really close one, roughly even numbers, discipline and terrain on the Ottoman side, and morale on ours. I've played this game for a while now, but this is one of the more intense battles I remember. Both sides run out of morale, and it's just a question of whose front line breaks completely first. We barely win, but at tremendous cost, almost 34,000 casualties. Still, in a war of this scale, getting 8.8 war score from a single battle is pretty wild. The Ottomans come back for another attempt in May of 1545, but this time with a smaller force that we're able to push back. I really want to get this siege, so I overstack pretty badly on Ankara. The AI is less likely to engage if you overstack, so we'll eat the attrition casualties for now. We finally capture the fort in August on the 64% tick. Hungary must really dislike the Ottomans. In addition to the loan we're not going to pay back, in September they offer us a gift of 150 gold. We make peace with the Ottomans in October, taking 7 provinces but no gold. Longtime EU4 players are going to notice we're taking a risk with this peace deal. We now border the Mamluks, a major power. Despite being over 100 years into the game, the Ottomans and Mamluks haven't fought a single war against each other, even indirectly. Surely the Mamluks will take this opportunity to go after their weakened historical rival. Let's take a look at the state of the world in February of 1547. Spain and Austria are having very strong games. Hungary is still independent and doing well, as is Great Britain. As far as our immediate neighbors, we've actually reached an interesting and unusual point of almost 4-way parity in the Middle East. The Ottomans still have the most development with 710. The Mamluks and Persia are just behind with 641 and 618 respectively. And Great Armenia is in fourth with 516 total dev. Poland rejected the Lithuanian Union, which set up a strong Russia game, yet another major power soon to be on our border. Russia declares war on Nogai in July of 1551. Nogai is allied to Persia, so this presents an obvious opportunity for us, and we declare our own war in August. As a side bonus, Nogai is also allied to Kandar, who's been able to survive this long based on a Mamluk alliance. Kandar is our obvious first target and a chance to put our navy to use for the first time. We capture the Kandari capital in March of 1552 and sink their navy after our troops force them out to sea. We march southeast to relieve the Persian siege of Ardabili. Persian troop quality is decent but still below that of the Ottomans, and we win easily. From Arbil, we march northeast to retake our fort in Ardabili, which fell to the Persians early in the war. We take a -2 penalty attacking into mountains, but it doesn't matter when we get our second victory of the war. In April of 1553, we complete another economic mission, develop the wool industry. This one gives us extra development in wool provinces as well as a goods produced bonus. We have enough Armenian culture provinces to complete the last mission on this side of the tree, resettle ancestral lands. This mission gives a bonus to culture conversion time, as well as a unique bonus that I don't think I've seen in any other mission trees. Converting provinces to Armenian culture gives 1 extra development of each type, which is pretty good. We finally retake Ardabili in December of 1553 on the 71% tick and march west to relieve the siege of our capital. Persia retreats before we can engage, so we go on the offensive. We separate peace Kandar in October of 1554, taking both of their provinces and some gold. We finish the siege of Amal in January and continue occupying Persian provinces. Our truce with the Ottomans ends in May, and I'm half expecting another ridiculous enforced peace demand. We take another mountain fort in July. The Persian army seems to be avoiding us now. I think if the AI views its forces as inferior, it'll avoid enemy armies, which seems to be the case here. We finish quality ideas in March of 1556, finally giving us a discipline bonus as well as finishing our national ideas and letting us enact the Military Zeal Act, improving our siege ability and morale damage. Russia makes peace with Nogai in July, taking a slew of provinces in Central Asia. We immediately move to take the Persian capital, which was briefly occupied by rebels. I go to check our Coptic blessings in April of 1557, and we have just one holy site in Yerevan. Remember how I mentioned hoping Ethiopia had a good game? Ethiopia ended up imploding almost as badly as QQ and is basically a Sunni OPM at this point. We catch a small Persian army in Avaz, which we defeat soundly. We get the notification here that the Ottomans are finally going to fight one of our rivals. About time. Sure enough, in April of 1558, the Ottomans declare war against Persia. We make white peace with Mongolistan in July and reach a peace deal with Persia shortly afterwards. We take gold in 4 provinces, finally getting Tabriz, but also taking 2 key provinces in central Iraq that'll prevent Ottoman expansion into Persia. Taking those 2 provinces in northwestern Persia lets us complete one of the earlier missions in the tree, overthrow the Turkmen. This one gives us a bunch of permaclaims to Persian territory as well as a temporary bonus to shock damage and an aggressive expansion reduction. Although we spent most of the war fighting Persia, Nogai was the actual war target, and we make peace with them in October, taking their sole Caucasian province and war reparations. One of our missions requires us to take all the provinces in the Caucasian region, which includes Circassia, now a Russian vassal. We now border 3 great powers in Persia, although their performance in that last war was pretty underwhelming. Speaking of bordering great powers, in August of 1560 we get a fun surprise, a war declaration from the Mamluks. You'd think we get a little more respect for having fought their historical rival in 4 wars and not losing a single time, but I guess not. We get an even more fun surprise when I check Mamluk army quality. We're going to have to deal with Egyptian Space Marines with 125% discipline. The Evangelical Union kicks off in February of 1561, but unfortunately we're going to have to pass on this one due to our capital not being in Europe. If we were desperate to join, we could move our capital, but I don't care enough and participating seems against the spirit of a zero diplomacy run. The Mamluks push into our fort in Sivas, but I don't think we're ready to fight yet. We tech up to Miltech 13, which improves artillery, and start training an additional 10 cannon regiments. The Mamluks push north to our coastal fort in Sinop, but I'd rather not take a battle there since we don't get any terrain bonuses. Instead, we're going to push into Mamluk territory, and I send our first army into Halab. In November, we pick up the Mercenary Discipline Age bonus, which is going to be very useful for our army, which is still majority mercenary. Half the Mamluk army comes back to fight us in northern Syria, which is good because I don't think we could take their combined force. Mamluk discipline is up to a ridiculous 130%, and we only win by sheer numbers of mercenaries. Once again, even with a victory, we're still on the wrong side of a 2-to-1 casualty ratio. We catch a small Mamluk stack in Divrigi, which is enough to pull the main force off the siege in the north. We push into the heart of Syria, and a Mamluk army takes a river crossing penalty to engage south of Antioch. In January, we take a second fort in Syria, then turn around and march north to relieve some sieges. We take a major battle at the end of March in the woodlands of Konik. This was probably a bad idea. We take a -1 attacking into woods, and I don't micro the armies well. We eventually come out on top, but this was a bloodbath. We lost over 38,000 troops, while the Mamluks lost around 13,000, a casualty ratio of 3-to-1 in their favor. This almost feels like AI payback for previous games. Usually the player's the one with a 25% discipline advantage. Still, even though we're losing a lot of soldiers, we're still generating positive war score. Our golden era ends in January of 1565, right before we recapture our fort in Sivas on the 71% tick. That seems like a sign to me, and we make peace shortly thereafter. We take gold and 3 provinces, including Antioch, the location of one of our Coptic holy sites. We're definitely not done with the Mamluks, but some of those discipline bonuses were temporary, and I think our troops will be more competitive in the next war. In June of 1567, we get a warning that the Ottomans are preparing to declare war on us yet again. This gives us time to get our troops in position, hire another merc company, and take Miltech 14. Instead of openly declaring, the Ottomans instead threaten war for the province of Urfa. We've already drawn or beat these guys 4 times, so there's about a 0% chance we're going to back down here. Army strength is closer this time around, with 104k on our side and 122k for the Ottomans. This is another clean 1v1, which I have to respect. Ottoman forces start the war in their Syrian enclaves, and against my better judgment, I go for another siege race. Our forces head west to siege Ankara and Koseli, while Ottoman forces siege Aleppo and Tigranakert. To my shock, we actually get the first siege, Ankara, on a 57% tick. At the same time, we finished upgrading our monument in Yerevan, which unlocks the mission Echmiadzin Cathedral. As a side note, this cathedral is still around in real life, which is pretty cool. This mission gives several free building upgrades, some tolerance of the true faith for 10 years, and a discounted Inquisitor advisor. We've already met the requirements for the next religious mission, control the holy sites, so we complete that as well. This is a really strong mission, giving missionary strength, manpower recovery, discipline, legitimacy, and CCR for 25 years. If we held all 5 Coptic holy sites, we could make this permanent, but, spoiler alert, we're not going to be conquering all the way down to Ethiopia. We capture the second Ottoman fort in Koseli and head east to relieve the siege of Aleppo. Ottoman discipline has actually jumped all the way to 120%, but we still have a huge morale advantage and we outnumber them almost 3-1. Somewhat surprisingly, the Ottomans don't add any reinforcements to the battle and we score an easy first victory. Unfortunately for the Ottomans, the retreat pathing from these Syrian enclaves is limited, and we get a full stack wipe in Ain Tab. A second Ottoman stack shows up a few days late and engages the bulk of our forces. Once again, our numbers are overwhelming and we get our 3rd straight victory. We take a river crossing penalty to attack into Urfa, but at this point our mercenary doom stack is just too much for the Ottomans to handle. The Ottomans still have limited retreat paths, so we're able to catch a routed army in Sinjar for a massive 28k stack wipe. The final Ottoman army in the east lays a desperate siege in Arbil, but they're just delaying the inevitable. I don't totally understand what happens in this battle. The game says we're victorious, but the numbers clearly show this isn't a stack wipe. However, there's no Ottoman army left on the map afterwards. This may be some kind of display bug, and it was an actual stack wipe. In any event, this war's been a disaster for the Ottomans. We're only a year and a half into it, and we already have almost 50% war score. We smash an undersized Ottoman stack trying to retake Koseli in June of 1569. After this point, the Ottomans give up trying to defend Anatolia, which we siege down completely. We reach a peace deal in February of 1570, taking 9 provinces. This is enough to finally become one of the great powers. The Religious League War kicks off in November of 1571 with the Ottomans on the Protestant side. Once we've cored and stated all the provinces we took in the last war, we complete the mission Shatter Osman's Legacy, which is another crazy strong one. All our Turkish culture provinces have their autonomy and separatism massively reduced. We get permaclaims to Anatolia, permanent power projection, manpower recovery speed, and most interestingly, a military tactics bonus. There are a ton of modifiers in this game, but it's really rare to see a direct modifier to military tactics, so that's kind of cool. We go after Persia next in October of 1572. Combined with their ally, they have a slight advantage in numbers, but I'm not too worried. Persia's tied up in another war against Transoxiana, and their troop quality isn't near the level of the Mamluks. We capture the mountain fort in Amal with no resistance in March of 1573 and move onward toward the Persian capital in Qom. Qom falls just 3 months later and our forces move further south. Persia finally takes a battle in the swamplands of Hoveja in October of 1573. Our reinforcements are a long ways out and we almost lose this one before they arrive. We unlock our 4th idea group in April of 1574 and I choose trade ideas. This is a pretty obvious one for anybody with a large presence in a rich trade node like Persia. We reach a peace deal in February of 1576 after sieging down a number of provinces but no further battles. We take gold and 9 provinces across central Iraq and western Persia. This lets us complete another conquest mission, Heritage of the Artaxiads, giving us prestige, permaclaims to the Persia region, and 20% CCR for 20 years. The League War ends in November of 1576 with Austria victorious and Catholicism proclaimed the official faith of the HRE. The Ottomans lost 1 province to Russia, but that's about it as far as our neighbors are concerned. We go after a new target for our next war, Russia. One of my goals for this run is to complete most of the mission tree, and we have one that requires taking Circassian land in the northwest Caucasus. The first battle of the war is a defense of our mountain fort in Lakia. Russian army quality is decent, about on par with ours, but they're badly outnumbered here. The next battle's in the steppes of Manye in November of 1577. Once again, our numbers carry the day. The AI isn't great about keeping troops close enough to reinforce each other, so if you do so, you'll be at a serious advantage. We march west towards Azaraba and engage another small Russian stack. Next is a defense of the fort in Circassia. In April, we engage some Swedish troops in Alista, but for some reason their morale is really poor, 3.1 compared to our 5.0, and they get stack wiped. In May, we unlock Miltech 15 way ahead of time. This is expensive, but 15 is one of the stronger Miltechs, unlocking new infantry and a large boost to base morale. We take a river crossing penalty to fight in Kabardia, and our morale is now up to 6.7, which I think is the highest in the world by a significant margin. I pull our forces back to upgrade our infantry and recover morale, then march west to relieve the siege of Circassia. These Swedish troops now have less than half our morale and have no chance. For the first time all war, we're able to engage the bulk of the Russian army in one place at the mountain fort in Alania. We're actually outnumbered here, but we have a significant terrain and morale advantage, and the battle isn't even that close. Russian army size and quality isn't bad for this era, but after fighting Golden Age quality-quantity Ottomans and Egyptian Space Marines, this war feels really easy. We catch another stack in Astrakhan in December of 1578, but the Russians retreat quickly. We march northwest towards Moscow, capturing the fort in Ryazan in October of 1579. Russian forces are carpet sieging behind us, so we head back south and take a major battle in Alista. Despite having multiple armies nearby, Russia chooses not to reinforce, giving us another victory. We head west to attack a Swedish army sieging Circassia again, and somehow their morale is just 3.0. For reference, this is about the same morale we had in our Independence War 130 years ago, and the whole Swedish force gets routed. Our forces turn north and siege Moscow in November of 1580. We now have enough war score to dictate a favorable peace deal. We take all 4 Circassian provinces, we pillage Moscow, and we take both war reparations and a huge sum of gold. We could have taken a lot more land here, but I'm not going for maximum expansion this run. Taking those last 4 provinces lets us complete the mission Secure Caucasia, giving us 10 military dev, some permaclaims in Central Asia and around the Black Sea, and an unrest and manpower bonus in the whole Caucasian region. Our next war is against the Mamluks in July of 1583, but this one's declared by us. The Mamluks have a bunch of allies and outnumber us across the board, particularly in cavalry and cannons. We start the war by sieging the Mamluk enclave in Anatolia, and we capture the fort in Isel in April. The majority of the Mamluk army lays siege to Haditha, and our forces head east. As I expected, Mamluk discipline has come back down to earth. 115 compared to our 107 is much more manageable than 130 to 100. We still have a massive morale advantage and win the opening engagement of the war easily. We push south, sieging the Mamluk fort in Damascus and capturing it in October of 1583. Next we head for the heart of the Mamluks, their capital in Cairo. Mid-war we complete the requirements for the mission, refine the Nakharar. This gives us some mill points and unlocks a unique Tier 2 government reform, but honestly it's not that great and we don't use it. The requirements for the next mission just need us to promote our mill advisor a couple times, so we do that and complete the Office of Sparapet. This one gives a unique Tier 5 government reform, which is decent, but I prefer the one we already have. After a lengthy siege, we finally capture Cairo in August of 1584 on the 85% tick. There are Mamluk armies surrounding us, but they seem hesitant to engage, so we make the first move, attacking south into Atfi. The Mamluks don't bring any reinforcements, so we score another easy win. I'm not sure what the point of having this army sitting there was. We march back east and catch another Mamluk army in the desert of Azraq, giving us our 3rd straight victory of the war. Despite having superior numbers, the Mamluks can't offer effective resistance, so for the sake of brevity, I'll skip ahead here. We convert enough Iraqi provinces to Coptic to complete a mission mid-war in December of 1586. The Church of the East has some cool flavor text and creates a Coptic center of conversion in Baghdad. We reach a peace deal with the Mamluks in April of 1587. We take 8 provinces, the Anatolian enclave as well as the rest of Syria. This conquest lets us complete the mission Levantine Incursion, giving us permaclaims in Palestine and Transjordan, a general, and some missionary bonuses. We've also reached 1000 development, which lets us upgrade our government rank from kingdom to empire. We declare war on Persia for the 3rd time in January of 1588. I'm just going to show one battle here since, like the Mamluks, this war is basically non-competitive. This is a defense of the mountain fort in Amal in November of 1589, which we had captured in the opening days of the war. As you can see, this is a rout, with our forces having advantages across the board: numbers, terrain, morale, discipline, and so on. We make peace after a 3-year war, taking 7 provinces and war reparations. We finish trade ideas in July of 1593, which unlocks several new policies. I think I've mentioned it before, but trade ideas get some really good policy options. The Ottomans and Mamluks finally go to war for the first time, with a peace deal being reached in April of 1594. These are AIs, so of course the Mamluks lost. The Ottomans happen to be our next target, and we declare war in January of 1599. This is our 6th war against the Ottomans, but the first in which we're the aggressor. Using the Holy War CB allows us to break the Ottoman-French alliance. This war is a bit different from the previous 5 in that we finally have a navy, which engages the Ottoman fleet in March of 1599. We have 2 heavies and 50 galleys, while the Ottomans have 6 heavies and 24 galleys. I wasn't sure if we'd win here, but I'm pleasantly surprised with a fairly easy victory. The Ottomans retreat, leaving 17 of their galleys on the bottom of the Sea of Marmara. If you want to see a land battle, here's us relieving the fort in Sinop in January of 1600. Just like against Persia, our troops are now superior across the board and there's not much suspense. The most annoying part of this war is having to build and use transports to siege the Ottoman fort in Cyprus. We agreed to a peace deal in November of 1604, taking 8 provinces across Anatolia and moving our western border ever closer to the Aegean. Less than half a year after making peace with the Ottomans, we go after the Mamluks again. We're able to get naval supremacy, defeating a force of Mamluk heavies in the Gulf of Cyprus in May of 1605. This isn't a hard war, but fighting the Mamluks is annoying due to having to siege down Arabia and playing chase with AI armies around the Red Sea. I check army quality in April of 1609, and we lead the world in land morale and army tradition. We make peace with the Mamluks in September of 1609, taking 11 provinces, including Jerusalem. Taking Palestine allows us to complete the mission, control the Holy Land, upgrading the monument in Jerusalem, giving us permaclaims in Egypt, and declaring us defender of the Coptic faith. There aren't any other Coptic nations. What's left of Ethiopia is Sunni, so this won't really affect the game or violate the zero diplomacy rules. In May of 1610, we finally shift to an entirely professional army, dismissing the last of our mercenaries. Mercenaries were key to this run. It probably wouldn't have been possible without them, or at the very least it would have required different idea groups. Also note that with our army tradition as high as it is, we're rolling very effective generals. This guy Avitus is a 6-4-3-4, a total of 17 pips, which is quite good. I do an economic comparison in December of 1615, and we have the highest income in the world despite having similar development to Austria, Russia, and Spain. This is one of the best Austria games I've seen, and they never even got the Hungary PU, which is usually required for the AI to do this well. In January of 1617, we complete one of our last missions, Cilician Rebirth. This changes the culture to Armenian in several provinces and gives us a culture conversion cost reduction until the end of the game. We've completed almost all of the mission tree and my goals for this run, but I want to clean up the borders a bit before calling this one. We choose one more idea group in September of 1619 and I go with offensive. We declare another war on the Ottomans, our 7th war against them. I'm going to skip to the peace deal, another chunk of southwestern Anatolia. This war was different in that Hungary finally started hitting the Ottomans from the European side. We go after Persia one more time as well, declaring in September of 1625 and making peace about 2 years later, taking a chunk of southeastern Iraq. The Mamluks are next, and we finish that war in the fall of 1630, taking Cairo and some Arabian desert. The game is mostly wrapped up at this point, but the Russians have one last surprise for us, declaring a conquest war in July of 1636. I haven't kept a massive military. Our army's around 100,000 soldiers, but its quality is high enough that I didn't think anybody would be dumb enough to attack. If you've watched my previous videos, you probably know my thoughts on AI Russia and EU4. I think it's one of the worst major nations in the game, and most of the time nothing more than a paper tiger. That's exactly the case here. Russia takes just one battle in Astrakhan in November of 1636 before letting us march north and siege Moscow. We finally force another battle in the steppes of Penza in December of 1637 before Russia's had enough and is willing to accept white peace. If I was playing this campaign out, we obviously could have extended this war and taken a bunch of land or gold, but at this point I'm just looking to wrap things up. In that spirit, we fight one last war against the Ottomans, who interestingly enough have come full circle and allied with Persia. However, at this stage, neither nation's a challenge for us, and we finish the war in December of 1641, taking the rest of Anatolia as well as Alexandria. I'm happy with these borders for this run, and we spend a few years coring and converting the most recent additions to our empire. Let's review the state of Great Armenia as of the end of this run. Our total dev is over 2,000, good for second in the world behind Spain and their colonial empire. As far as the rest of the great powers, Russia takes the number 3 spot. They were really set up for a perfect game, with Poland not taking the PU and us weakening the Ottomans and Persia repeatedly. Austria's in 4th and Hungary's in 6th, a combination you almost never see from AIs. Even though they're not a great power, this is a pretty impressive Tuscany, especially considering it was formed by Florence. The Americas are the usual mix of colonial nations, although a few native tags are still holding on. Africa doesn't seem to have a single dominant nation, instead a number of smaller regional powers. As far as India and China, it's a little bit hard to tell through the fog, but Vijayanagar has clearly beaten Bahmanis and Ming has disintegrated completely. My favorite AI tag on the map has to be Iceland here, who are independent and seem to be doing their own no diplomacy challenge. Here's a look at the culture map mode. We were able to spread Armenian culture quite a bit. The combination of religious ideas and mission rewards meant that we could spread culture fairly quickly and cheaply. And here's the religious map mode. We were able to convert our entire empire to Coptic, and we have a borderline ridiculous 17% missionary strength. We have 3 Coptic holy sites, and it wouldn't have been that hard to get all 5, but I didn't feel like snaking down into Ethiopia. Here are our idea groups. For the most part I like these, but if I knew how much and how long we'd be relying on mercs, I would have taken mercenary ideas instead of defensive for our first group. And here's a look at our economy, which is actually fairly well balanced across tax, trade, and production, not that that matters. And here are our army losses, which are about what you'd expect for a nation that's been fighting without allies against major powers for most of the game. And here's a look at the game stats. We went 43-0 in our wars, which is more wars than I would have guessed. Overall, this was another fun run. My favorite part of any EU4 game is that danger period early on where the game's on a knife's edge. That's why most of my favorite nations are relatively weak ones neighboring or soon to neighbor great powers. However, I've played enough that even with tough starts, I can usually get out of that danger phase fairly quickly. The combination of a tough start, no diplomacy, and how the Middle East shook out this game, strong Ottomans, Mamluks, Persia, and Russia, meant that we were in that danger zone for quite a long time, which I enjoyed. The no diplomacy aspect of this run obviously made the early game harder. I was shocked at how easy the Independence War was, with QQ basically imploding in on itself, but not having allies and being next to 4 major aggressive powers gave me exactly the challenge I was looking for. The most annoying parts of this run were mostly minor things, not being able to fabricate claims in the early game, not being able to run counter-espionage, not being able to buy and sell institutions, and so on. Aggressive expansion was definitely harder to manage than usual, due to not being able to vassal feed or improve relations. I had to be careful with several wars not to take too much land, and we ended the game with some crazy high AE numbers with our rivals. On the other hand, there are actually some perks to an isolationist game like this. No allies dragging you into dumb wars or hitting you up for money every 10 years like clockwork. Anyways, that about wraps this one up. If you enjoy this sort of content, feel free to like and subscribe. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.